When I started in the early 90s, it was basically before its time. I tried to start a nonprofit so I had learned about these methods just happening onto a book in the dorm library one day that talked about one of the methods, and a Swiss woman doctor in the 40s and 50s who'd tried to popularize it, written to governments, and the father of the pill did a study that said, yeah, it works, and the Japanese government did some studies, but she never really got very far, and I thought, well, this is the 80s, it'll be different now. But it wasn't. People were busy with RU486 and AIDS, and nobody was really focused on male contraception, and the policymakers didn't think men were interested. But I continued with the advocacy and got to write, after a series of articles, a short article in Ms. Magazine, less than a page, and got over 200 handwritten or typed at that point with stamps requests for more information. And that's when I realized people really were interested and that this was a new generation. The people who were in power, who were 70 in 1992, maybe weren't interested, but the people who were 30 or 20 then were. And so for a lot of years we did advocacy, spreading the word about what there was and also gathering the interest and getting that across to the policymakers. So that was Kirsten Thompson of malecontraceptives.org and me. We teamed pretty nicely. And then there was the opportunity to start Parsemus Foundation and actually do some of the things we had been saying for all these years. Somebody ought to do something about this. So at least do the pilot studies. And we did that with ultrasound. And finally, after all these years of talking about all this amazing method, discovered that it doesn't work as well in humans as in monkeys. And it's like, okay, now we have our answer after 30 years, and we can move on. So even the failure is success in a way, and now we're focused primarily on Vasalgel, long-acting method, long-acting non-hormonal method. Part of the issue too is that the male pill concept has been forefront in everybody's mind, and there really are some issues with that. It's good to have a variety of choices, but people have concerns that men would forget pills or whatever, which is fair because it's human nature to forget pills. People forget their heart medication. So I think that's why it's important that there are longer acting methods like Vasalgel, and then you also want to have a contrast with something like, if we could ever develop the clean sheets pill, then that's a quick acting method, and you have that variety that people can choose from. The funding is just so minimal compared to anything else like HIV or cancer, or if you've seen some of the graphs that people put together, it's like HIV funding, reproductive health funding, but I think at the same time there are a couple entrants now, participants taking this from a business perspective and saying, hey, let's make real companies here. And I think it's good to have more than one horse in the race. We have a competitor now, and hopefully somebody will succeed. And we need the big investors to step up at this point, as well as some of the big foundations. Everybody says, well, how about Gates Foundation? Well, Gates Foundation is not the only game in town. They can't do everything. They shouldn't have to do everything. I think enough men want this that it could really happen if men with the means, along with, we've had lots of support, everything from $1 to $12,000 for Vasalgel. As long as that can continue and grow once there are some real companies that present themselves as being ready to support and with a realistic path to market, then I think we could finally get something. Contraception in general is one of the best ways to both give people rights at the same time as you're saving the planet, because you give people the choice to do what they want. I mean, if you figure almost half the pregnancies in the US are unplanned, you don't have to talk about trying to get people to do something they don't want to. Just first, let's give people the tools to do what they do want. And we know that every person has an additional impact on the planet, especially in wealthy countries like ours, where your kid wants a BMW when they grow up or whatever, or maybe not kids these days. But I think educating girls and contraception are two of the best ways to, for example, help meet the development goals. And also, male contraception is such an untapped market in terms of there are only two options, condoms and vasectomy. And condoms are important, especially in new relationships, but people do get tired of them eventually, when you've been together 6 months or 6 years or whatever. And vasectomy has to be considered permanent. So there's not much in the middle for men. So it's kind of low-hanging fruit, basically. When I started this, I always said, I'd talk to people about what I did, and they'd say, male contraception, would men use that? And I figured success would be someday I'd get to the point where I'd say, oh, I work on male contraception, and they'd be like, oh yeah, I think I read something about that. So I think we're getting to that day when people know it's a real thing, and people have put aside these things they said so easily about, oh, men would never use that, because just the reality has overwhelmed that easy statement.